Welcome to my fun room and to my big comfy beanbag chair. So, shout out to my friend B. Lewis who gassed my head up when it came to my writing. So I've been writing and creative writing and journaling a lot more for fun than I had in the past month or so lately. But I was writing today and last night, and a topic that's really dear to my heart is generational healing, generational trauma, and the connection between like our ancestors' trauma and ours, especially for people of color, and how the slavery of our ancestors, or if your ancestors were enslaved, but the slavery of your ancestors and how it affects you physically and mentally today. So this is going to be about mental colonization and what a mental colonizer is. So I'm just going to use my journal as a reference while I talk about it. So a mental colonizer is a way that they are because they've experienced physical or mental colonization themselves. And they do not create an environment where their kids are free or other people around them are free to express themselves, but they push their own personal views. Now, this is different than simply parenting and saying, you can't run out in the street or you might die. It's not like, no, don't push your views of staying safe on your kids. Like, no. But I don't think I need to over-explain the common sense type shit. I'm talking about the not really allowing them to explore their own selves and explore their own beliefs. But I'm sure you guys know what I mean, so I don't need to over-explain it there. So this is usually, when it comes to mental colonization, there's usually an element of fear put in place to, or manipulation to convince somebody to think a certain way and to tell them that they are wrong for having a certain view or a certain opinion, whether it's quoting scripture or doing anything to use some type of coercion or guilt instead of allowing them to have their own view. So this is, when it's mental colonization, it's done in a way that stunts their growth and their individuality and self-discovery. So let me say that part again, because I think this is a really big difference in how you know when somebody has suffered mental colonization and when they're being a mental colonizer. It's done in a way that stunts your personal growth and your self-discovery of your own individuality. So, yes. So, just like with slavery and people getting free and physically leaving the plantation to thrive, so you know how slaves had to leave, and then when they left their physical plantation, they were able to start their own lives somewhere else. A lot of times when you're discovering yourself and you realize that you've been brainwashed to believe certain things that just don't work for you, what happens is you also, in today's age, have to distance yourself from those mental colonizers and people who do this to you mentally. So it's a way of programming and manipulating that stunts your growth. Sometimes it's intentional and sometimes it's well-meaning, but either way, it is still harmful. It does not matter if you realize what you're doing or not. If it's hurting you, you have to take action. So either way, you must distance yourself. So examples of this can be religious or spiritual circles that foster a lot of just groupthink. And groupthink is really easy to happen in different friend groups, or you wouldn't believe. It's really everywhere. But if it's in an environment that's toxic where you're made to feel unwelcome or bad for having a different view, or they're trying to coerce you to have a view with that group, then that's the way that it can display itself. And not even just spiritual or religious circles, this can also happen in very extremely toxically polarized political groups. So a lot of people have like a mix of nuanced views, but I think really you see the toxic polarization. I feel like I don't really see that. I don't meet a lot of people that like that in real life. I meet people like that on social media. And then the people like that I meet in real life are the people who maybe spend a lot of time on social media, and the algorithm has catered to them basically consuming a bunch of bullshit prejudice stuff about the other side to the point where they're not based in reality. But anyways, So as you evolve, you'll find it and start to free your mind, you'll find it harder and harder to be around people who are like that. And that's part of life. Like as you grow, you'll lose people. And like during slavery, I can't remember, I should have looked this up beforehand, but I was too lazy. But what Harriet Tubman did, the people who went back to get the slaves, there was a certain name for it, but I can't remember. So, and there were a lot of people who played her role, like going back to the plantations and getting the slaves. But anyway, not everybody went with her. Like she would have been able to free a lot more if they would have gone with her. So get this, the people who stayed behind, they were so fearful and they were so comfortable in suffering that they couldn't risk the ambiguity of a new journey. Even if there's a risk that the new journey will make you happy, it's just that fear of not knowing. And I think that also is something that keeps a lot of people in views and beliefs and ways of thinking that really don't serve them. They're like, I grew up thinking like this. This is what was deeply programmed into me. My generation's all this time, they're all Democrats or they're all Republicans or they're all Christians or Muslims. And then like as you grow into yourself or as you start learning, you start finding out stuff that's like, I don't think this works for me. But you wouldn't believe how many people like stop themselves when they get there because they're like, this is all I know. This is my whole identity. Also, another sign of mental colonization, your whole identity is wrapped up in that way of thinking. Basically, you're erasing yourself. And so, let's see. All right, let me get on back to where I was here. So, I'll just start reading the rest of what I wrote and stop and add my own commentary to my own shit as I feel a need. So, some people are happy and comfortable and at peace in like I'm not trying to just shit on religion. Let me make that clear. So, some people are happy and comfortable and at peace in the faiths that they practice in their religions or because they are fully informed and they're not in the headspace where people can just tell them how to think. They still have their own individuality. Like not all their time and all their energy in their entire identity is spent around this group. So, but other people, and I'll give an example of Christianity. That's the religion I was raised in. And so it was interesting, and this is true for everything. You'll see different types of people. There are some, or a lot of Christians I met, they're the nicest, kindest people I've ever met. Like they're actually embody that example of Jesus, and they're just loving, and they're just all these things. But other times, they're some of the most like miserable, self-loathing, oppressed, unloving people that you've ever met. And when I left religion and saw answers within me, instead of outside of me. Let me say that again. When I saw answers within me instead of outside of me, that's another way to keep you from being mentally colonized. Because that's what they do. Like they'll program you to seek answers outside of you, whether that be God or a man upstairs, which is not in itself bad, but we're also meant to know and get to know ourselves. If it's all going outside of you, then it can be toxic. Because at that point, you're not self-aware and you're bound to do anything. Like, I don't even trust you. Let me check my battery here. I can't check my battery. I hope this doesn't die. All right. But if it does, I'll just pick up where I left off. But when I left that faith, because there were elements in it that just didn't work for me, and there was also just a lot of shit that frankly did not add up, but that's not what this video is about. At least that's the conclusion I came to. But I realized looking back when I got that new perspective, the people that were still in those communities that I knew, I didn't realize how much oppressed energy they gave off. Like they just gave off oppressed, can't think for yourself, and just living your life smiling through pain all the time. And A universe where you're free to create your own purpose without the ultimatum of eternal damnation. Let's be clear, that's not a choice, that's an ultimatum. That's manipulation. But, anyways, I digress. But in a universe where you're free to create your own purpose, sometimes for people that leaves too much ambiguity, it leaves too much personal responsibility, and it leaves too many questions unanswered. Because going within yourself can be really scary when you've been conditioned to seek all the answers outside of yourself. Because frankly, that means that there are a lot of things about you that you're just not aware of, and that you just don't know within the depths of your soul. And I think a lot of times that personal responsibility is too intimidating for people, and you definitely have to work your way towards that in steps. So for me, living in a place or universe where you can kind of create your own purpose, I've heard in another video where this guy, and I actually agree with this, he said, by design, life is meaningless. That's also in the Bible too. Like, there's a scripture that says life is meaningless, like chasing the wind. And he said, what that means is inherently it does not have a meaning. Everybody creates their own meaning. There's not just one, you have to do this. It's like, no, everybody's so different, and you create it yourself. You're here to gain experiences. So, for me, it creates a sense of adventure, but when you're in the process of still freeing your mind in those early stages, it can create fear. And fear, that is literally the driving force of Earth's matrix. Fear. They want to keep you scared and freaking the fuck out all the time. Like, it's crazy, especially if you notice when you pull back from that and stop watching as much TV and consuming as much social media and just like start watching people. Like, there are times where I'm like, I just feel like people around me are robots. Everybody's just on their screens all the time. And then I feel like I'm weird for walking around barefoot in the grass, or just being able to sit and stare at a tree and be completely content without just having a nervous system that's so wired to be overstimulated and fearful all the time. But fear keeps you stagnant, and also fear is a really good tactic for people who want to, for crazy people, the bad type of crazy, for the bad type of crazy people who are trying to control people. Because fear will keep you from seeking knowledge through books, people, places, and experience. Like, it'll just keep you stagnant and trapped, just like a dog in the cage. Except the cage don't even have a lock on it. All you gotta do is just walk forward, like, boop, cage is open. So all you gotta do. You can, what is that story? Like the 3 bears, the 3 pigs, the big bad wolf? Yeah, the big bad wolf and the 3 pigs, where he was like, I'll huff and I'll pluck, or I'll pluff, or I'll puff. All you gotta do is blow that bitch, and that cage will fall down. But, like, literally the cage is an illusion. It doesn't have a lock, but you choose to stay there because seeing the tall bars around you is enough to scare you into stagnation, even though all you have to do is just fucking push it or blow that bitch down. Breathe too hard and it will fall down. So it's like the cage is made of tissue paper, the cage is holographic. But ultimately your mind is the prison, and your mind, the state of your mind, will manifest itself in reality. And so if you're letting the world control and manipulate you with all these fear tactics and all this chaos and shit, and you just start to elevate at a level of chaos because you're just blindly just consuming, scrolling, or all these different things, then I feel like I'm starting to lose my train of thought. Let me try to get it back. But yeah, and so like you'll start subconsciously creating chaos in your reality, because after all, this existence is one big ass lucid dream. It's one big old lucid dream. One time I started lucid dreaming. This is the only time I remember ever doing this, but somebody was chasing me in the dream, And I was like running and and randomly there was this piece of furniture and I go and just throw it behind me, not even looking. I turn around, that little piece of furniture, first of all, it flew a lot further than it should have flown because I was just like, yeah. And then it literally squashed the person who was chasing me. Now, that don't make no sense. I should not have been able to do that. But I just willed myself to do it. And I was like, oh, they're chasing me, get them away. That's this reality now. Lucid dream. This is one big lucid dream. So just close your eyes and picture that cage gone, and then open your eyes up, poof, and it's gone. It was all an illusion. You know what? That would be a really good guided imagery. I might do that in the future, where you are picturing the cage. If you close your eyes right now, fuck it, do it now. We'll do a little short one. So close your eyes right now and picture what your cage looks like. And then just say different affirmations. And then as you do that, just see the bars disappear into thin air. They was never even fucking there. They was never there. They were never there. It's an illusion. So, yeah. American society also creates a cult of isolating and creating fear and illusion. So some of this stuff I already said, I got ahead of myself. Social media is programmed to keep you scrolling and interacting and not reflect reality and the truth. So the news a lot of the time is negative. And I started noticing that shift as I got older. I was like, wait a minute. It's their goal is to keep us freaking out all the time. And I was like, you ain't about to get me fucking freaking out all the time. I'm trying to enjoy my life. I don't get to do this again. You're not about to play with me. But if we choose to consume these fear tactics for diets all the time, we're just like those dogs walking into the cage, closing the door. I can't get out. Help, I can't get out. Girl, if you don't blow that cage open. Didn't nobody tell you to go in that cage? But it's you have to be in society, but not of society. So I'm here, I'm working, being productive, but I'm also meditating, and I'm also taking time to do things I enjoy and write and just be creative and eat healthy and do all these things that are good for me, and not just be doing all these things I think I'm supposed to be doing, getting mindless about it, and then getting so burnt out that I'm just okay, now I just need a distraction. So I'm going to pick up a bottle or pick up my phone, and just all this wasted time and energy. I just can't. But when you really start to distance yourself from that fear programming, certain things and spaces don't even appeal to you anymore, because who want to be in a cage? You can't scratch. You can't scratch or do nothing in there. But when you free yourself from it, you also won't be tempted to put other people in one. So like I said at the beginning, people who mentally colonize people, it's because they're also doing it to themselves. Free people, free people. Mentally oppressed people, oppress people. So which one are you? So I think realistically we all go back and forth and have to practice mindfulness is late. Blah, blah. We have to practice mindfulness to be self-aware enough to know whether we are putting ourselves or others in bondage. We can go back and forth from any state at any time. So right now and at times throughout your day, I want you to take deep breaths and ask yourself if you're operating from a place of freedom or if you're operating from a place of bondage. And I also, while I was journaling, I wrote down a small little list of what I perceive are signs that you are in a place of bondage or signs that you're in a place of freedom. And also, these are all just my perspective. Don't nobody have to take what I'm saying at face value. So, signs of mental bondage, in my opinion, can be an overall bad state of mind and lack of peace. All the time. That doesn't seem to go away. And also, there is always chaos around you that you subconsciously manifest. And another big one is you judge others. And so my ass, the funny thing about me is I get so annoyed with people who are judgmental and tell other people how to think that I will start judging people who are like that to the point that I'm vibrating the same energy of them. Being judgmental of judgmental people. So it's something that I also have to watch. So another sign that you could be operating from a place of bondage is you are uncomfortable and or jealous around free-spirited people or people who are comfortable in their skin. So I'll say that one again, because as I've gone on my journey, I've started to notice this. It's almost like you start to light up and you're like a flashlight for all these places. And that includes dark places and other people. And so don't be surprised when you're on this journey that it seems like people that you've known a while, they just start acting funny, like doing little shit. And you're like, what the fuck? Like, I'm just minding my business. So I'll say that again. A sign that you are vibrating in bondage is you are uncomfortable and or jealous around free-spirited people or people who are comfortable in their skin. And signs that you are operating in freedom. Freedom. Okay, Holly, stay focused. So, your creativity and your gifts will expand. Because really, mentally freeing yourself means that, oh my God, my nose itches. Okay, it's a good thing I'm almost done with this because I can feel myself like starting to get distracted as I'm talking. But anyways, your creativity will expand and your gifts will also expand because you get to know yourself. You're going inside yourself instead of looking outside of yourself for answers all the time. Because you do that, like, y'all, we have a lot of crazy ass, narcissistic ass, wild ass motherfuckers out here who are vibrating low and they get all their validation outside of themselves to the point where they're trying to rob you of your energy and take advantage of other people. So if you're also vibrating in a place where you're seeking outside of yourself for validation, those people can, like, prey on you like a leech. So, creativity and gifts expanded. And so number 2, it's harder to rattle you. You have more resilience. Like, you don't get bent out of shape as easily. Man, okay, side note. Sometimes I'll be watching people who get super bent out of shape over little ass shit. And I'm just like, what are you going to do years from now? Like, that's not going to work. How are you going to be able to function in society without going crazy? Y'all done seen them apocalyptic movies, like them zombie apocalypse movies? So the level of fragility to the point of not being able to regather yourself is scary. Like, we really got to do something about this mental health crisis and really start teaching people how to heal themselves, because it's necessary. Like, it's not looking good. But anyways, okay, your creativity and gifts expand. You got more resilience. 3, this is a big one. You are open and you're accepting of others even if they're different from you. And woo, y'all, this is something we all have to be mindful of. You're open and accepting of others. And then number 4 kind of goes along with number 3. I'm saying this because I grew up from a biblical perspective. And like a lot of people, even if you didn't grow up as Christian, anybody who read about Jesus, you know that, okay, this is a good way to just be. This is a good way to vibrate. And so when you free yourself, you have that Christ consciousness and you vibrate on that Jesus frequency. Oh. But that is